Welcome, everyone,
Oh my
to
God,
your
you scared
next
me.
episode of Batshit Crazy. Going for high energy. We had a week off.
Success.
We were both kind of sick, and it just never quite worked out. But we're back with new energy level unknown to mankind.
Back and better than ever, I might add.
Maybe not better than
Exhibit
ever.
A.
My back's kind of
No,
hurt.
no, no.
But
Bat
that's pretty
Poncho.
cool.
We're better than ever.
That's pretty cool.
It's got configurations. I can wear it as a cape if I so wish.
Is that new?
No, I've had this for a little bit now.
I don't remember seeing that before. Is that the green one?
Yeah, it's the green one.
Oh, okay, maybe I have seen that. I guess I never saw the face of that up close. It looks really nice. Oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. Green's a good color on you.
Every color is a good color on me. It's partially because of my bleached, washed out. It's partially because of my bleached, whiteout skin. I probably glow in the moonlight and burn in the sunlight, but damn it, every color looks good on me.
All
right.
Doing? Oh yeah, we're gonna do season 2.
We're gonna talk about like one of the best animated shows ever created ever in the history of animation.
Some might say the best.
Some might say that, but it would be wrong. But we can just agree that it's like top 3 easily.
What would you put over it? I have a guess.
Batman the animated series.
Above this. You really would do that?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
It's a good show.
I absolutely would.
But
no, it's about. Listen,
was enough of that show though quality though? If you compare apples to apples, I mean, it's a lot shorter show.
I encourage you. I know you won't, but I encourage you to go back and revisit it on Max. There are 3-4 seasons, and it is. It's better than you think because it is timeless.
But
it's timeless. It's a classic
Clone Wars series. Like even the later seasons, you know how good those are. There's so much content.
Yeah, I know how good those are. I understand that the
is this just
the
your
weight
Batman
behind
love
the statement
overriding everything?
No.
I think it is.
It kind of is, but yes, no, it's not. we can both agree that these 2 shows are easily top 3.
Okay, we can agree on that. And we'll go from there into what we're actually doing today, which is revisiting season 2, which we actually didn't think was going to be a great season to review at first until we started writing it all down. And then it's like, oh, there's a lot more in here than I remember.
There's some good stuff that happens in season 2, my guy.
It starts off kind of where season 1 ended, which we forgot to touch on last week somehow, with Cad Bane infiltrating and stealing the holocron with all the data to the Force-sensitive children, which is one of the first times Palpatine gets straight up duped. And you can tell he looks kind of angry about it.
Yeah. This is one of those rare examples. Palpatine is such a character that's so conniving and everything's so plotted and his revenge works out so successfully. And it's rare that we ever see somebody pull one off on him. It makes sense that it would be the baddest, the best bounty hunter of that era.
And he, in turn, captures Ahsoka, which forces Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Windu to save her and foil Cad Bane's plans, which is one of the first times you see kind of all the Jedi doing a little mission together in the show, I believe, right? As far as more of extensive rescue kind of op.
One of the things that this season does really well, which is so interesting to the overall arc of the relationship between Anakin and Mace Windu, is we see a lot of missions with Anakin and Mace Windu together in this season too. And yeah, this is the first. Well, no, it's not. But this is another big coordination between more than just Annie and Obi, and obviously Ahsoka.
Yeah, it's really cool seeing how similar Anakin and Windu are to each other.
And just let the fan fiction fly because I still think that, Mace would have been one of the perfect masters for Anakin. That would have been great. Um, Unfortunately, it didn't happen, so we'll just have to save it for the Star Wars What If dream show. But yeah, Cad Bane and the Ahsoka capture are a big deal. The rescue's a big deal. But one of my favorite things about this story arc is the concept it sets up for the Jedi holocrons of the Force sensitive children, because we see that reoccur several times throughout this show. And then again, it bleeds into another branch of Star Wars with Cal Kestis in that first game. So it's really cool that uh, this has that introduction, and we get to see the holocron and that concept emerge for the first time. So, what do you think of the Jedi hosting a registry of Force sensitive children they're going to definitely abduct?
I mean, they should have put it in the cloud. Seems like a bad idea to have one little hard drive carrying all that data, but I would have maybe split it up a little bit. Maybe not put everything all in one. That just seems like a recipe for disaster. And I get it makes for good TV. But yeah, I like the kind of easing the way into the importance of holocrons in the show, which comes up more and more and through other Star Wars properties. They were kind of a not heavily used before this point, correct? I mean, there wasn't really much mention of. I mean, they
No.
existed, but not in the way that was any significance. And you see him kind of pulled a lot more in even the newer movies and referenced a lot more. So yeah, it was kind of a good little intro into that data and how the Jedi have their own, and as well as the Sith.
Yeah, it's interesting because the idea of the holocrons, Sith holocron, Jedi holocron, it's like a USB that you need the Force to open. It's really interesting, their concept of a storage device for information. What I'd be more interested in is to see how they capture that information. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, that
Um,
hasn't ever been alluded to, has it? Even in books, I don't
no,
believe
not
I've.
really.
Yeah, that'd be a cool
Yeah,
thing to learn.
how how do they do that? Do they download it, and is it like a Harry Potter thing? Do they hold the wand to their head and just pull the information out and stick it in the box?
You know,
Like, how does that work?
maybe it's not their head they have to pull it from. That's why they don't show it.
Okay,
Might be a
alright,
suppository.
we might have to discuss the rating of this show.
It was George's idea.
Right up there with the metal bikini.
And from there, we get the whole separatist attempt to rebuild the droid factories on Geonosis.
Oh, this is a really interesting concept. I can't wait for you to describe this episode because, man, I've got some things to say about this.
This is your segue right into it.
Well, so yeah, we get to see obviously Attack of Clones is when we were first introduced to any other desert planet that wasn't Tatooine. And so we go to Geonosis, home of the bug people, where the Clone Wars started. And then, you have that gap between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And you're like, well, what happened to this planet? What happened? There's a war. Did they ever go back? And the answer is yes. They go back to Geonosis to try to reopen the droid factories. And this is interesting because I don't think it's this episode, but certainly in this season, we continue our storyline on Geonosis, and we meet the Bug Queen, and she's got some interesting parasitic children. Can we call them that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Uh, so why don't you fill us in a little bit right there?
Um trying
Or
to
not?
I was completely blanking. Well, I was trying to see where because in the timeline of the episode, I think this Padme and the Clovis deal, does that happen simultaneously? Does that cut back and forth?
No, I think the format of this season is a little George Lucasy, where he doesn't really edit things well chronologically. So, I think those two timelines are separate, but think they so I think it goes Geonosis, and then in the season it jumps to Clovis and Padme, and then later we go back.
Can you please just cut it out? Cut it
Oh,
out.
we've lost you. You have OD'd on the force. Clap if you can hear me. Oh no. We've had our first technical error on the show.
Yeah, I saw that happen.
Oh wait, you're here. You're back.
Hey, you froze
Woo!
too.
Oh good. On my end it was just me. Everything looked okay. I think it was just a you thing. So everything on my end still running. So
Yeah, it might have it paused over here on my thing too. Sorry about that.
all right, we can
We were
edit.
frozen in carbonite. Carbonite.
Yeah, that'll be a big cut. So
We don't.
we'll stick with the Geonosis thing then. So then we have Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Kion Mundi lead the invasion to stop the factory rebuild. That was cool.
Anyone that doesn't know, Keon Mundi is the giant forehead with the bad mustache.
Yeah. Giant forehead man. So that was cool seeing him in action. That was kind of your generic stop the bad guy episode. I don't know if there was anything, remember anything too profound in there worth mentioning?
No, not really. Yeah.
Yeah. So from there you had Padme uh discovers that Clovis is secretly helping rebuild with separatists.
And tell me, Zach, who is Clovis?
He was the
He was the ex-boyfriend, wasn't he, before Annie?
yeah, I think so. I think you're right. What was he the leader of?
No idea.
I can't
That
remember
did
either.
not stick in my mind. I
Yeah, that was kind of the
was it even somewhere notable? I don't know.
no, I don't know. I think it was just kind of right at the tip of my tongue, but then I lost it. But yeah, that was the first episode. You get some of the inner workings of the Senate, which was some people hate those episodes. They think they're kind of boring. I just like the prequel movies. I kind of like that stuff, seeing the politics and how it all works in there and all the backstabbing, especially. You see a lot of that in the show. There's a lot of inner turmoil and nobody gets along. Um, oh yeah, there was also Ahsoka and Barriss.
This is back to Geonosis.
Yep.
This is back to Geonosis, right?
Yep.
And this is where they discovered the Bug Queen, and they have a little drama there. They escape, and they go back, and they discover that the Queen sent worms implanted in some of the clones' brains, effectively turning them into zombies.
Yeah.
They are extensions of the Queen. She's basically controlling them from a planet away via bugworms in the brain. And is Shakti in this one as well? Or no, who's Barris's master? Is it Luminari? It's
Yep.
Luminari, right?
Yep. I think you're right.
And so I think later too we get to see Anakin and Obi-Wan rescue Luminari from the Bug Queen.
Yep.
And so yeah, that whole story arc I found I don't it felt like a filler arc, like, it didn't really play into, Star Wars as a whole, but it was really interesting, just as, like, background lore, for this universe, and I you know, hats off to Filoni and George Lucas for just taking a big swing and going for it, because 'cause they're like, "No, this has got nothing to do with the Emperor or how he becomes Darth Vader later or anything like that," but oh, spoilers, by the way, Anakin becomes Darth Vader. Um, but, it's a lore episode and or series, and that was really cool for them to do, and, I kinda like the idea that there's more to this Star Wars universe than just the Force, and, there are zombie bugs, which is I think is pretty cool.
And that is one spot I think this show, I'm not saying it suffers from, but maybe could have Well, that's the thing. They already have so many episodes. It's hard to say they needed more show, but they do these kind of things like the Queen, the zombie horde, and all that stuff, which could have almost been a full season worth of stuff. They just kind of it's all really cool concepts. This show just does a lot of that, where it's like a couple filler episode things with great ideas, but never either quite made a full season out of it or didn't want to, and some of that can feel choppy at times, and I kind of understand some people that have that critique of the show where it can be all over the place because it can be, but it is like you said, none of it is wasted. It's all some type of lore added to, so I never viewed it as a negative. There isn't a lot of episodes that are just straight up waste of time. It's even if it feels out of place, it still has a purpose, which is what the show's very good at. I think is its strongest suit. There are some stupid episodes. Don't get me wrong, but I would say 90% of it is substantial in some way, even if it's not like in line with what's happening in the current story. But
I think it's in this series. Grievous and Obi-Wan interact throughout the entire show, which is a really interesting. Well, that's not interesting. But when you get to Revenge of the Sith, you know, uh, Grievous is like, "Oh, General Kenobi," almost like, I've seen you a lot, and here you are again. But he's never met Anakin before, and I think it's interesting that Anakin they were able to navigate that not just season by season, but through the entire show. They kept Anakin and Grievous away to maintain that continuity. Um, but yeah, I know where you're heading. I know the segue you're going to, and that's
well,
they
actually,
go
I think I
down.
remember. Yeah, so Obi-Wan and Grievous fight. Grievous loses.
Mhm.
He escapes, though, of course, and Obi-Wan, Rex, and Cody track him to what is it?
Ethkoff or
Salumkai? Salumki? I don't know how you spell it. It's something with an S. SEL.
Sulumkai?
Yeah, that one.
Sulamkai. Sulamkai?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And then from there, Rex gets hurt and stays behind
Oh,
to find the
I love
clone.
this.
Yeah, this is one of the best parts. I think so. Rex gets hurt, stays behind, finds a clone deserter, and the deserter saves Rex, and in turn, Rex lets him go, which is I think, one of the pivotal points in this whole show for character development.
Yeah. Especially character development for Rex, because it shows the overarching theme about. I mean, we said this much the first time we started talking about Star Wars, before we decided to do a Clone Wars breakdown. One of the beautiful things about this show is it goes out of their way to show that the clones are as unique and indisposable as individuals as they are meant to be disposable, just like battle droids. And for Rex, this is one of his first. Because Rex up to this point has been very by the book, and Rex up to this point has been very. He follows the regulations. The rules are there for a reason, and he enforces them. He abides by them. He is a by the book officer, and he comes across this deserter, which is practically unheard of in the Grand Army. And this deserter has a family, and this deserter is just farming. He's just living his life. He's just doing his thing away from the. And it shows not only Rex's ability to overcome his let's just call it programming, because at the end he lets this clone uh continue to exist as a deserter. He doesn't turn him in. He's not charged with martial law or treason or anything like that. Like, Rex lets the dude just go about his life. He gave him sanctuary when Rex was hurt. He helped him get on his feet, and Rex was like, you know what? Uh, I am at this point in my life, in my development as a character, as a person, where I can say there's a difference between the rules and regulations and what is right and what is wrong. But it also shows, for the first time, the clones are able to determine for themselves. They're able to disobey orders. They're able to desert, which up until this episode with this deserter, isn't something anyone ever thought was conceivable of the clones, unless there was something physically wrong with them inside their heads. And this deserter, man, he sets up. Rex letting him go sends shockwaves through the timeline because they revisit this deserter more than once in the future. And this deserter, I mean, they even help the Bad Batch, uh, Clone Force, whatever it was, and they help Omega. And so, like the consequence of him letting him go, it comes up later. And so, yeah, this is one of my favorite moments in the Clone Wars is when Rex makes that decision to allow him to stay, I mean, essentially free of the Republic of the Grand Army. And I think for is Rex to this point, and he's in the main cast, but I wouldn't call him at this point in the series, in the universe, I wouldn't call him a main character just yet. And for him to get this opportunity, to get this moment, I think is really what propels him in his popularity and propels him in his essential nature to the story of the Clone Wars.
Yeah, and that kind of actually goes to his relationship he fosters with Ahsoka, who we're going to touch on next. There was a small character development segment with her following this where her lightsaber gets stolen and she must learn the value of patience. It wasn't a monumental scene or anything, but it does give her some more of that classic Ahsoka, very grounded personality and a next step into that. And then we get into I think the crux of this season is the Mandalore conflict.
Yeah.
That's planned to retake
Um,
Mandalore.
so yeah, the Death Watch. Yeah,
So we want to
there
start off with Satine and
is.
Obi-Wan because I think it
Oh,
starts with
man,
them heading to Coruscant to the Senate to make them respect Mandalore neutrality, which then at that point you get a glimpse into Obi-Wan's relationship with Satine.
yeah, this is really interesting. Because before now, our what do we know about Mandalore is Boba Fett, some expanded universe stuff, some comics, some really cool comics. But this is Mandalore brought into canon full force, and it's not the Mandalore we know. It's not the warring tribe planet of badasses that beat the Jedi in a war. It's a planet that in the stake of a galactic war said we're pacifists, we're neutral. And so the leader of Mandalore, Satine, she's making moves in the Senate. Again, more the politics you were talking about that you like. She's trying to push and demonstrate. She's like, hey, we're the Swiss, we're Switzerland. We make cheese and we're neutral. Uh, cheese being Beskar weapons. But yeah, this is so cool because the leader Satine, Prime Minister, Duchess, whatever her official title is at Mandalore, her and Obi-Wan Kenobi have a history. They have a past. They have a love life relationship that never was. And I don't know if you ever read them. When I was a kid, I couldn't get enough of them. The old Jedi Apprentice books, which covered Qui-Gon and Obi Wan was just a pest. He hit hormonal teenage years, and those books describe they're not canon anymore, but all those books describe that like Obi Wan was just as much of a pain as Anakin was that we saw, and in those series, Obi Wan had a couple of relationships. But in this story arc, we find out that I mean Obi Wan straight up says he goes, "Hey, if you would have asked, I would have said goodbye to the Jedi and came with you." And I mean, talk about your what ifs. Obi-Wan, King of Mandalore. That'd have been crazy. Uh, but yeah. So, what do you think of Obi-Wan, Mister By the Book, Jedi Knight, Jedi Master, schooling Anakin on the ways of the Jedi Code? What do you think of him having a romantic past, attachments? Because man, this comes back up later in the show, and it is absolutely heartbreaking when what happens happens. So what do you think of Obi-Wan and Satine's relationship?
I think it changes his character completely, and I think it also puts in perspective why he was so um protective of Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, and why he knew clearly Padme and him had a relationship. He could have said something to anyone and got him in big trouble, or even just scolded him himself, but he never did. He always just made quips about probably shouldn't be doing that. But outside of that, it makes a lot more sense now, considering he's had a relationship in the past. He knows what that feels like, and even though he is by the book in a sense, he's also a little more open than I think people gave him credit for, which I think the show does a lot more for his character development in the future. But this was one of the first real glimpses into his past that it wasn't heavily, everything was really explained, but it was kind of an implication more than anything else that he might be a little bit softer inside than people once thought. But yeah, I don't know if the show really gives you a whole lot, but it does give you just that, opens that door for his character to have a lot more emotion and maybe insecurities than you once thought. But
Yeah, absolutely. And and that's just one part of the whole Mandalore story arc. You have this I mean, we find out this is when I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. I get really excited about this story arc. It's one of my favorite in the series. Um you get introduced to the Death Watch, who are a group of Mandalorians who are not on board with the pacifist motion. And you see the Separatists are more or less attempting to bring Mandalore not only into the war, but bring them in on their side. Uh, and so you've got promises made, promises broken. You get to see the dark saber for the very first time,
mhm.
which was pretty sweet. Um, you get to see Obi-Wan face off against the leader of Death Watch for the first time. I believe this is where we're introduced to Bo-Katan, which was
I think
pretty
so too.
cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of Mandalorian goodness before the show came out, before the Mandalorian with Din Djarin came out, and it all starts pretty much right here in season 2 of Clone Wars. So if you're a fan of the Mandalorian, highly, highly, highly suggest that you jump on over to season 2 of Clone Wars because there's some good stuff in there.
If you haven't watched the show yet, why the hell are you here? Get off of here and go watch
Exactly.
it.
They're trying to make up their mind on if should I bother? Let's just watch this one podcast. Should I bother?
But from there, so Palpatine agrees not to invade Mandalore. Death Watch is essentially over. So that kind of closed out that arc. You had an assassination in there, Lolo. I don't know if there was much. Was there much to that other than just another political squabble? I don't at least
I
remember
completely
anything.
forgot about it. So
Yeah, we're just gonna skip that. So then it kind of comes to the next, with Anakin breaking the blockade with the prototype ship.
oh yeah, yeah. That's the one with the cloaking device, right?
Mhm.
And they fight the Spider General guy.
They crash land on Bafalusha. Yep, they crash land. They work with Hondo and bounty hunters to protect the village, which is like one of the first times you see them kind of the Jedi having to step out of their comfort zone and work with some bad guys.
Yeah, it's the messiness and turmoil of a galaxy at war. You kind of have to make a friend, enemy of my enemy is my friend sort of deal. So that was cool to watch. The concept of the cloaking ship was really cool. It looked like a giant dart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What'd you say? What'd
And
you say last night about cloaking ships?
no, no ship that small has a cloaking device. Uh, the Spider General, we get introduced to that dude, which man, he got blown up and murdered more times than anybody else. the fact that he survived so much, there's no reason why Plo Koon couldn't have survived. I'm just saying.
Hey, he
What the
might
hell,
still be
George?
alive.
What the hell, George?
And from there, we got the Zillow Beast capture, escape on Coruscant, which was kind of one of those like weird stories thrown in once again. It wasn't bad, just kind of like, okay. So this
The
rare
Zillow
beast,
Beast,
the last of its kind.
kaiju,
Yeah.
Star Wars kaiju.
This Star Wars kaiju is captured and escapes, and it's the last of its kind, and they are forced to kill it, which then it is now extinct. So that was trying to go with the whole morality, do we, don't we kind of thing.
This was another series that featured Mace Windu and Anakin working together, because the reason they found the Zillow Beast, uh, the Republic dropped essentially a EMP nuke on
Oh yeah.
a droid army because they were invading the Sebulba people
Okay.
planet,
Yep.
and so they dropped this bomb. And at first, I was like, "Oh my god, they just nuked the droid army!" And then the mushroom cloud evolved into a EMP type static explosion, which
Mhm.
wiped out everyone and everything. Caused the creator woke up Godzilla. I mean the kaiju. I mean the Zillow Beast. And they immediately, the first, it's a two-part episode or story. The first part deals with them testing their weapon, which again, Star Wars using weapons of mass destruction on their enemy. Well, we're not going to talk about it. Uh, but Palpatine is really pushing for the Sebulba people to join the Republic, and they find the Zillow Beast, and then Palpatine finds out the Zillow Beast is practically indestructible. So they capture it, bring it to Coruscant, where their plan is to definitely not hurt it, so they can study it to develop armor, but they're definitely not going to hurt it while they do this.
No.
and then and,
No,
and
never.
then yeah, it gets out, and then it gets dead very quickly, and bye bye Godzilla. I mean kaiju. I mean Zillow Beast.
Yeah. So there was a little more to that than I remember.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And then this ends to the actual end of the season. I did not realize all my notes here were just season 2. I thought I had some season 3 in here, but this is a long season. So
It's a good season.
the last arc is Boba Fett, his revenge on Mace Windu. He
Baby Fett.
poses as a cadet, tries to use bomb to kill Windu, but takes down the ship. Ship crashes on Vancor, I believe. R2 calls for help. Plo Koon, Ahsoka, and Commander Wolf arrive. Boba escapes. Plo Koon and Ahsoka chase after bounty hunters. Boba and Bosk, everyone's favorite Battlefront 2 character, they end up in custody. And I think that's where season 2 ends.
Um, Boba and Bosk end up in custody. Yeah. So, elaborating on that, this is another Mace Windu and Anakin storyline. They're doing more Jedi type things together, and Boba Fett. If everyone remembers the end of Attack of the Clones, Mace Windu chopped off Jango's head, and
Reference,
so
he is how old here? He's probably, you would say,
12, 13, somewhere
somewhere
between
in,
12 and
yeah,
14. Yeah, somewhere in there.
mid-teens.
It depends on how old he was officially in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah.
But yeah, Boba uses, because Boba is also an unaltered clone of Jango. He uses his father's likeness and similarities to infiltrate a Republic Youngling army indoctrination field trip with Mace Windu, because his plan is to get close to Mace under the guise of a Republic cadet, and then assassinate the man that murdered his father by chopping off his head. And it almost works. Mace Windu and Anakin get blown to hell in a spaceship, and they get trapped on a planet. Downside is Boba also kind of gets trapped on there, but you see him working with bounty hunters that we'll see again later in the future. This is kind of like Boba's um, exploration mission into bounty hunting. It started off as Revenge Against Mace Windu, and then it evolved into a Bacta Tank series that starred the Mandalorian. Um, no disintegrations. Um, yeah. So I do think at the end, Boba ends up in jail. Not that it lasts long,
But I
but
think this is the other small tidbit that this added to was seeing Plo Koon and Ahsoka together, which becomes a very common occurrence throughout this show as its run continues. You wouldn't think of her and him being associated very much with Anakin being her master and Obi-Wan, their relationship, but she does develop a very close tie with Plo Koon, and this is the first I think you really see of that as far as her working with him, and his guidance for her, I think was maybe more impactful for her character development than anybody else. I might actually, he really brings that mindfulness to her that she was lacking and tells her to really kind of settle down, take your time. Plo Koon doesn't do anything in a hurry. He's very, let's think first and then act 10 minutes later kind of dude, which was very good for her because I think it
yeah.
helped her character development.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely a really cool thing to see. That's another thing that the Clone Wars does really well, kind of interestingly, is up until the Clone Wars, we assumed that the Jedi missions were always just master and apprentice doing everything together, and it was a little weird when we saw Anakin and Obi-Wan split up in Attack of the Clones, and Anakin went to protect Padme and make moves on her on Naboo, and Obi-Wan went to do the real work and get captured. But you do get to see like different combinations of Jedi working together. You get to see Obi-Wan in this season do his own thing on Mandalore. You get to see Anakin not with his Padawan doing things with Mace Windu. You get to see Ahsoka doing things with Plo Koon. And speaking on that relationship, Plo Koon's the one that found her when she was a baby, and like
Mm-hmm.
that is such an interesting relationship all the way through because he's got a nickname for her, Little Soka, stuff like that, and it's cool to see them change it up and switch it up. And they never really address if that's a common occurrence or something that happens specifically because of the war. But it's almost like the Jedi behind the scenes are making moves to not only train the younger generation, but to adapt personalities to the situation. Because whereas like one master might be really good at this, his apprentice isn't, but his apprentice is good at something else that another master is. So it's cool to see him swap in and swap out, and
It's almost as
yeah, it
if
is
there's
cool to
like a
see.
graduating experience to where you have your master that is your master, but once you learn most of what you can from them, they're still your master, but you almost rotate to the other higher council members to learn from them, and it's not as cut and paste like you said as we all thought it was. It was just kind of one fit, which makes a lot more sense because everybody has their speciality, and you see Yoda a lot in the show take a lot of people under his wing for episodes where he teaches them quite a bit and kind of eases out a lot of their faults and points them out. And you see a lot of his very slow way of doing things, but in the end, he beats through pretty much everything. So yeah, it's a cool concept, and I love more training in anything that makes lore make more sense. That's kind of my cup of tea. So I love this show for that reason.
Yeah. And the Clone Wars really, they really demonstrate how messed up Palpatine had the Jedi. He had them doing things they weren't supposed to, like the war, like screwed with their mojo as he moved the pieces around the board on he's playing checkers, not chess. He's playing checkers with himself. And then every time you throw in a Cad Bane or an Obi-Wan and Satine Padme Mandalore arc or something like that. Every time you did that, that was like somebody coming over and just like kicking his board over. So he had to kind of, re-put the pieces where he wanted because they always ended up back where he wants. He wanted Mandalore out of the conflict. He could have just let them be neutral, but he wanted them out of the conflict. And so there's this whole big thing that he essentially orchestrates, and like every scenario except for the Cad Bane holocron heist at the beginning, every scenario ends up the way he wants it. And that's another great thing about this show is he really mastermind. He pulled the strings behind the entire war, which is fantastic. This season was so cool, man. You got to see one thing we didn't talk about was Mace's realization who Boba Fett was, and you get to see
Yeah.
Mace Windu handle a little bit of consequence. Mace,
Yeah.
how do you like it? A little bit of consequence coming back for your actions, and so it's this we get Mandalore's introduction on screen in canon. You get Obi-Wan's a romantic revelation. Oh, duck.
I
And
got a
we
point to make on though. I got a point to make.
quack.
On the Windu, when you're talking about Windu and his I almost think this show does a really good job of not giving Windu character development on purpose. It shows a
Oh yeah.
lot of his, even from you go back to Tales of the Jedi, even as a young Jedi, then his stubbornness and hard headedness is apparent throughout this whole show, and they never change his character much. And I've seen people complain about that he just kind of ends up being this annoying, stubborn dude the entire way through. But I think that was on purpose because you can't have a character that has a ton of like underlying stuff going on because he's so rigid even at a young age. He is by the book. Even though he has his dark side to him, he is very when him and Dooku have that interaction in the Tales of the Jedi, when Dooku is saying something like, I can't remember the exact scene, but where they're saying they should say something else. They're trying to cover up whatever happened in the forest. And Dooku's like, yeah, we just need to tell the council this. And Windu's like, no, we must tell them the truth or something. I don't know what the exact situation was. But yeah, I think it's very on purpose that they leave
Oh
Windu the
yeah.
way he is. And it's you can see how it caused problems because even Anakin, you can see that animosity he had with him was evident in the show. Even though they do a lot more together, and they do work well together. I think it's apparent they don't like each other, and they never will.
No, yeah, you're so right, man. You're so absolutely right. And I do believe that it is intentional because I've always seen Mace Windu as what was wrong with the Jedi Order. He was
Mhm.
the most by the book, stretching all the way back to Tales of the Jedi. He was
People blame
the
Yoda,
most power.
but I don't think it's more Mace than anything
Well,
because Yoda just is like the guide to all the young kids, and
yeah,
and it's shown in the
no,
show too.
Yoda,
He's very out of touch almost with what's happening to a degree, but Mace is kind of the in
he is. Mace is
charge.
the leader. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the leader of the High Council. He's so Yoda. For anybody that's made it this far and you're still with us, good for you. A little bit of Star Wars knowledge coming your way. Yoda is not the leader of the Jedi High Council. Yoda is the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. He's the most knowledgeable. He's the most powerful. But the leader of the Jedi High Council, the guy that he's got the final say, the president of the Jedi, was Mace Windu. He was
And that's very
elected
apparent
by
in
his
the show,
peers.
especially.
Yeah,
He's in
yeah.
charge, and you know it.
I think he's leader of two or three different councils because there's more than just the High Council. More lore for you, good people. But yeah, Mace Windu's in charge, and I've always viewed him as exactly what was wrong. He is the top seat of power. He is maybe Yoda's stronger than him. Maybe I mean maybe Obi-Wan, maybe Anakin could take him. Uh, but he's easily one of the strongest living Jedi alive. He's in charge, and he's so rigid. He's the reason Anakin falls. His cold detachment is part of the reason Anakin falls. I think Mace Windu is one of Palpatine's greatest weapons in turning Anakin. So that's I agree with you so much. I'm so glad you said that, man. I've thought that for so long.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's so by the book, and yet the prophecy that so many Jedi believe, he is thinks it's all bull. And I'm not sure if it stems from jealousy or what, if there's something to that. I've seen that floated around that he's more just jealous that he's not the chosen one. I don't know if there's some,
I always thought that too. Yeah.
but at the same time, he clearly states that Yoda is stronger than him. So I don't know. It's not like he's oblivious to I'm the best. He just seems to be so against Anakin for no real reason when he's had no. I mean, Yoda at least had a reason because he said he senses darkness in this kid, and he had a viable take. Obviously, that made sense. But Windu just was like, "Nah, don't like you. Screw you."
No,
But yeah,
you're not the
it
chosen
was
one. I'm
cool.
the chosen one.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
could.
So yeah, a lot of good stuff happens in season 2, man. A lot of good introductions, a lot of good finality
Yeah, I'm
to
really excited to get in
things you
these
might have had questions.
next couple seasons
Oh
here
yeah.
because my memories, I'm not gonna lie, is a little bit foggy on these earlier seasons. I've watched some stuff to kind of get a refresher, but the farther we get into this, the more I think excited it will be because there's a lot better,
Oh yeah.
bigger and better storylines coming.
Because when I jump into Clone Wars, I start at season 3 looking for
Yeah, I
episodes to
kind of did
watch,
too.
and then move forward, because season 3 is when it really.
Picks
I
up.
think I don't remember if it's season 3 or season 4, but there's a definite switch. There's a definite change where you're like, oh, this is a cartoon, but this is no longer a kids show.
Yeah.
So there's
So stay tuned.
some good stuff,
Buckle up is what we're saying.
coming.
But yeah, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
We will be back
After party.
next week. Yeah, we're gonna do the. But yeah, thanks everybody for watching. We're gonna end this right now. Goodbye. We love you all. Hugs and
Bye.
kisses.
Yeah.